Yeah, so I've gotten to understand research data management a lot, and not just understanding what it is, but also understanding the importance of research data management. And this has come from, experiencing bad research data management in the past and knowing how painful it can be. And so just learning from that process of, having the bad experience of not doing what you're supposed to do, and then now learning all the things that you could be doing to make life easier for yourself.
Like many people out there, I've had my own share of technical disasters. During my PhD in particular, there's one incident that I kind of talk about a lot in training sessions as a way to bring myself closer to the audience, really. But because of the large volume of data that I was working with and the level of infrastructure that we had at the time in the lab, it was a real challenge to organize and store the data in a way that was kind of really conducive to the research process. And we used external hard drives with a kind of dock system where you would take kind of a bare hard drive and slot it into a dock attached to various computers. And because of the nature of the work, we had various lab computers that we were using. And so every time you plug the hard drive into the dock, there's a chance that, if you eject the drive improperly or you jostle the drive while it's working, there's a chance that you can corrupt data. And that's basically what happened to me. I don't know how it happened, but one of the drives became corrupted. We didn't really notice until later. There was this weird thing where some of the data on the drive was fine, but some of the files were corrupted and were not fine, right? And because of the large volume of the data, that was the backup in a sense, and I wasn't able to recollect the data or fix that data set. And so I just had this issue where the data that I had originally collected was no longer available. And because I was in program in doing a PhD as a student, I didn't have the timeline to be able to recollect that data. So it was just lost, and I had to make do.
And when I was in graduate school, people didn't really teach processes of data management. They didn't talk about the importance of having scripts. And so early on, I had a couple of research projects where I had coded data interactively, where I am using menus to code variables or to estimate models, and then only later on realized that I had made some sort of mistake. And because I wasn't using scripts, I had to go all the way back to the beginning and start all of my coding and all of my data analysis over.
Everything was on my computer. It was password protected and all that. But I found myself having to go back into folders and having to read every transcript all over again to figure out, what I was going to include in something and what I wasn't going to include in something. So it's like the naming of the files. I was like, oh, I spoke to this person and I put their name in there. But I'm like, the person also said they shouldn't put their name in there, right? So this like, then I have to go back and put a number instead of the name. So those things were coming to me as I was dealing with the data. And I was like, oh, this is awful.
In the second year of Brighter Spark Applied Research, we were working with a community partner that had several rounds of young people participating in a program. And we were evaluating the impact of that program on those young people. When the first round of information about several cohorts came in, one of the students built a really strong analysis plan and way of being able to organize the data so that it could be analyzed. At the time, when we did the first analysis, it didn't feel necessary to ensure that we knew the IDs of each of the youth that participated. At the time, the program was only run through once per person. The program actually changed between our first analysis and our second analysis, and some people came back from the first round into the second round. and we didn't want to analyze them in the same way as someone who had gone through the program once. We had no choice but to go back and redo our previous analysis file organization system in order that we could add on the new people and do the appropriate analysis.
I've heard lots of stories of people who've had worse experiences where they lose all the data and have to completely restart their program, and you lose years of work, and that can be a real disaster.
It was those early mistakes that helped me on a personal level learn about the importance of having good documentation, good practices for backing up my data and my analysis, and making sure that all my work is reproducible.
This was an experience that helped me with my postdoc research and future subsequent research to really think about naming protocols, because I think that naming would have made my life easier. It's so basic, right? But we take it for granted, right? Naming it. And it was all my own research, so I wasn't really giving the data to anybody else. But even without the proper naming, you are going to have a difficulty, especially if you change computers, right? How do you go back to the same file and know that this is it, this is the file you're talking about, and not like having to go through 40 transcripts before you figure out what you're talking about?
Having to go back and change something that we had already done when we are a paid service that has a budget and a responsibility to generate revenue, it was a real issue both for time and money, and we felt really bad about not having had the foresight to recognize that that was a possibility and built a system that was robust enough that it wouldn't have been a problem.
This series is brought to you by SPARC, a Center for Social Research Innovation.